My name is Gulcin Gilbert. I'm at Skydive Paris Valley for the 40th anniversary of Skydive Paris Valley. Today is September 4th, 2016. I have over 4,000 jumps, and I made my first jump exactly, well, not quite exactly, but 40 years ago at Skydive Elsinore on July 4th, 1976. To commemorate the 200th anniversary of our country. It was a very special day. I went up in Big Red, which was their Howard, a wonderful radial engine airplane, and we proceeded up to about 3,000 feet. I did a static line, and I proceeded to sprain both ankles trying to avoid a Jeep that I thought I was about to hit under a round. And thought, okay, after I dusted myself off, this is pretty cool. Maybe the landing wasn't so great, but I was hooked. So I've been skydiving for 40 years. I didn't skydive again right away, but about 3 years later I did another first jump course at Taft, and then another one at Elsinore, and then it was kept going. So I mostly started in the sport in the 80s. I have several highlights that I would say in the sport. One of which was I got a chance to work with both Tom Sanders and Norm Kent from the very get-go because they were both working at Skydive Elsinore. And here's an early shot of me in the 80s shot by Norm Kent. I would say one of the highlight jumps that I did was also shot by Norman Kent, and it was an ad for vitamins. And this ad says, "I never go out without my vitamins." And this was shot here at Skydive Paris, rather an iconic ad, and it was presented in at least 20 different magazines: Time, Life, Newsweek, National Geographic. They made a poster out of it. In fact, Gary Prim at State Line had a fresco done on the wall of his Skydiver bar. So if you ever go through there, you can see it plastered in about 40 by 60 feet inside the cafe. So that was a lot of fun. I did quite a few pieces of stunt work, and both in front and behind the scenes with a fabulous group of people that included B.J. Worth, Harry O'Connor, Jake Brake, and I did a number of prep shots for some of the James Bond film, and one of the films, License to Thrill, worked on that. Another one of my really most favorite jumps was in 2001 when I went with Tom Sanders and Denise Sanders to Venezuela, and we jumped off Angel Falls. It's my one and only base jump. It's almost really a skydive because it's 3,200 feet. And we worked with Pedro Luis, who was our fixer in Venezuela, got the job done. We were using Lone Rangers to get us to the top. It was an amazing, amazing experience, not just the dive, but just being in the jungle. Ayun Tupui, which was the Pima Indian name for Angel Falls. And I got a chance to do a little bit of an expeditionary hike to a secondary landing area where Mark Schuby-Knudsen and Dave Major did a jump with wingsuits, and they wanted to land at a distance a little bit further away. So that was amazing, both by doing the base jump, which was epic, and also being in the area. And that brings me to one of the reasons why I love the sport so much, which are the amazing people involved in the sport. I don't think that I would be in this sport as long as I have been if I weren't constantly inspired by the people in the sport. And there are so many people like B.J. Worth and Harry O'Connor and Dan B.C. and Kate Cooper and the Knatzers and so many, Tom Sanders, all the photographers that I've had the honor and privilege to work with, like Andrei Veselev and Henny Wiggers and Willie Boykin and Dave Major and Tom and Norman Kent, and so many wonderful, wonderful cinematographers who have brought the sport to the people. And then there was this jump where there was no photographer, and that's also one of my favorite jumps. BJ Worth and I went to Agra, India to petition the IPC, International Parachuting Commission, for the rights to do the World Paraski Championships in Deer Valley, Utah. So it was kind of a roundabout way to be able to do this event, but the IPC meets in different countries every year, and this year it met in Agra, India. So while we were there, there was a rumor that we might actually be able to jump over the Taj Mahal. And that rumor grew, and 7 of us had brought rigs, and so we were prepared. So we spent the day, when the day arrived, at a kind of a loading area near the airport, waiting for the final permissions, and everybody had to consent to it. It went as high as the Prime Minister of the country, because the Taj Mahal is the most sacred site in at least one of them in India, and it's a no-fly zone over it. So we worked with the Special Forces, we got all of the permissions, and it was really down to the wire because we had been there early in the morning and we didn't get to do the jump until just before sunset. Had it been another 10 minutes, we would have been shut down. We used a de Havilland Beaver, which was a mail plane for Delhi Airways, and that airplane flew us to about 7,500 feet. And it was right around that time, though, that it became clear to us that the pilot really had no intention of wanting to fly over the Taj Mahal, whether he had the permissions or not. And a little bit of a struggle ensued in the cockpit between an Aussie named Tim and him, and BJ was spotting in the back and calling 5 right, 10 right, 15 right, and finally Tim took the controls and he turned the plane towards the drop zone, held it, and the pilot was absolutely stunned that someone would actually do this. We were in a little bit of a spiral because it was also a bit nose forward. Finally BJ said, "Cut, let's go." And the 7 of us jumped out, found ourselves directly over the Taj Mahal without a cameraman. But the image of the sunset pink over the Taj Mahal and the rose glow that it had is burned in my mind forever. We did have a couple of pictures taken after we landed from the Special Forces, and these were the 7 brave souls, patient souls, who waited for permission to be able to make this incredible jump. And as far as I know, no one else has ever been allowed to do it, and this jump is quite famous in India, that we were actually able to make this jump. We had grins that lasted about a week after that one. There are so many jumps that are amazing in my history of jumping. But I would say probably my greatest privilege was to be a part of World Team for 20 years. And we made jumps in multiple countries. But around the time that I came on board, we were jumping primarily in Thailand. And in '99, World Team did a 298-way completion. And then in 2004, I was able to join on the 357-way completion, which was the new world record. And then in 2006, we did was then and currently is the largest big way relative formation record that still stands. Here's a picture of the team. The team, I'm not sure if I think it's the entire team, because it consisted not only of the 400 skydivers, but all the support personnel, and there were over 100 support personnel as well. So BJ and Bobby Worth took 500 people to Thailand, and we made some incredible skydives culminating in the 400-way. Here's a picture of a couple of the C-130s that were on the cover of Parachutist magazine. Here's an exit shot from one of the C-130s, and actually yes, I think that's the base coming out, 16-weight chunk. And then this is the build. And then this is the final dive, which again was on the cover of Parachutist. A little bit difficult to see. After all the multiple jumps and multiple records that I did with World Team, I was also involved in another wonderful group of skydivers, Jump for the Cause, and we did a 151-way world record in, I believe it was 2007. I may be wrong on that, 2005 or 2000. Yeah, I think it was 2005. And then Kate Cooper said she wasn't going to do another one, and then all of a sudden word came out that she was going to do another one. And it was such an incredible experience for me because it was something that was a little bit beyond just making a record, because we were also raising money for City of Hope for breast cancer research and prevention. So there was a cause behind it, and it changed the flavor of the skydives. And so many women were from around the world it was so important for them to be on this dive. And they trained hard to be able to make the cut, to be on the team. And many of the women came from countries where fundraising was not something that was well known or accepted. So women sold their cars, they took extra jobs, they found babysitters for their families, and whatever it took to be there, they came. I knew that the 2009 one would be the last one that Kate Cooper and her brilliant team of organizers were going to do, so I decided I was going to make a documentary about it. And I did, and it's called Pink Skies. And Pink Skies is the story of that record that we made, 181 women from all over the world coming together and Jump for the Cause, making an absolutely brilliant skydive, everyone on the same page at the same time, and an amazing, amazing group of women and friends. So the film was done, and it played all the film festivals, and we won over a dozen different Best Documentary Awards. And it's a cause still very near and dear to my heart. I have a family member going through cancer right now. There is not enough that is being done both on the Western medicine side of things, because too many of the research studies are Me Too studies, and they're being funded by the pharmaceuticals who have money at the core of their business paradigm, and there needs to be more studies done that incorporate food and naturopathic cures. An integrative method is something that so many people are doing, but it's still not quite accepted by mainstream, where there is a lot more health available. And of course my quest and my vision here is prevention. And that's what we talk about a lot in Pink Skies. What are the things that you can do in your lifestyle to prevent cancer? Because it's much harder to deal with it once you have it. So you can see us and find out more about prevention at www.pinkskiesthemovie.com. I want to thank Jeff for putting this together. This is a very important part of our sport, to take down the stories of the people involved in this sport. I was lucky enough to be and start skydiving during the golden era of skydiving, I believe, because during the time period that I was a student and I continued in my progression, we went from the B-12 military containers and frontman reserves and big heavy boots and bell helmets through and a cutaway system that was almost impossible for you had a lot of strength you had to have a lot of strength to, once you pulled the dust covers off, to pull and to make sure you didn't pull one side before the other, which I was told would be almost certain death. And then we went through to tape wells and all different kinds of other releases till the three-ring circus, and then we of course went to piggyback reserves, and so many changes in the sport in terms of safety. I'm definitely one of the ones that came from the era where sex was safe and skydiving was dangerous, so I'm happy to be here to report about it. I want to thank Friends of Skydiving for what they're doing to keep the memories alive of the really amazing people in this sport. These are people who shunned the common mindset in our society about litigiousness, and they invented, and we created so many inventions in the sport. Used to be the military drove skydiving. Now it's the sport skydiving that creates the innovations that the military adopts. So that gives you some idea of how valuable that this sport is, not only for that aspect, but just the continued innovations in the sport.